2026 Ways and Means meeting. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now it's asking for your email.
All right. I don't think there's any
What is it,
public
Ways and
hiding
Means?
back there.
What the hell's login?
I just use
DD
the guest
is you, right.
password if you.
So we'll get right into it.
For this.
We're going to change the order a little bit since we have such a large schools turnout here. We'll do schools first. Do we have a subcommittee updated report, Steve?
We do. As you recall, 2 weeks ago, we found a discrepancy with one of the stipends that was being paid to an employee, and it turned out that the stipend was overstated by $211,000. So the school committee discovered the source of the error, corrected it, and then in terms of the surplus of $211,000, it's not really a surplus, but the money they took away from that stipend, they used to fund a Fox Hill assistant principal for $124,521 per year, and then also add a third teacher to the Newcomers Academy, and that brings the subtotal of the new subtotal for the operating budget to $61,904,445 for a total increase of 3.97%.
And did you have a vote on it?
The subcommittee voted 5-0 in favor.
Thank you. We have Dr. Connie, Superintendent Schools, Nicole Kasha, Business Manager for Schools with us. Would you like to add anything?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, I want to make sure I thank the subcommittee for all their work on the budget. As we stated last time, it's a rare occasion that we come back and we're actually asking for $13,000 less than we asked for last time. I do want to thank the committee, Mr. Campbell in particular, for finding the cell error. It was, again, it was just a problem with the, I think with the corrupt file, so we went back and did correct that. And it provided us an opportunity to add back in a position that has been requested for, I think, 6 or 7 years. So, why Fox Hill is our second largest elementary school. That would give us an assistant principal both at Francis Wyman and Fox Hill. The evaluation load of an elementary principal, they're the largest in the district, so this would help with the evaluation piece and supervision. Also, we have a Fox Hill project underway, and that's actually very time intensive, and the principal needs to be sort of participating in that, and this really makes sure that we have administrative coverage in the building moving forward. So for lots of reasons, we felt this was the time to do that. Obviously, historically, you could say I do prioritize positions that provide direct services to students because, as Mr. Moran will tell you, assistant principals for the elementary schools show up annually in the budget, and they're usually the positions that I take out to make sure the budget works. So again, I want to thank them for their time, and again, we are coming to you with this money incorporated, and the corruption's been corrected, and would request that you really approve the budget that you heard about last time. And again, it's for actually $13,000 less than you saw at our last presentation.
Thank you. And, with a 228-page budget, it's very hard to get it perfect. That's understandable. Are there any questions? Right. $61 million, you're going to have one question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is the $13,000 a finder's fee or a Ways and Means fee?
No, I did say that. What was funny is I think that's why many eyes looking at this is important, because I swear I looked at that document 50, 60, 100 times and just didn't, and just the numbers at some point just looked together. So
We're just joking. Yeah.
No, I know, but it's just one of those things. So I was concerned that we were going to have to cut an additional $200,000. So I think it worked out well. So thank you.
Motion to approve?
Second. Did you have a question, Brad? I did. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
So you guys are over the budget guideline, and the case was made that there were extraordinary circumstances that put the budget request this far over guideline. The previous time we discussed this budget, you were not happy but fine with moving ahead without these additions to the budget. I guess I'm kind of struggling with that. I understand that these have been needs for some time now, but you guys were going to make do before, so I just have to ask the question: what makes these things so urgent that we go over guideline?
Again, Dr. Bond, thank you. This question was predictable, so I'm saying thank you for asking it. I think we have to go back and retrace some of the order of the presentation, which I shortchanged this evening. So what I would tell you is we would have, under guideline, if we removed the salaries that we have dedicated toward the newcomer program that we discussed and the need for that, and included and incorporated the Fox Hill Assistant Principal, we would actually come in right around 3.75, 3.73, so we would make our guideline. So if I were presenting the full budget to you, what I would have included is the Fox Hill Assistant Principal at guideline. The additional positions that we're asking for are for a population of students that is relatively new to Burlington that we are serving. So the salary dollars that are over guideline, Dr. Bond, I would say are the salaries that are associated with serving this high needs group of people. Again, that would have been the order that we had presented again, I can do the presentation from the beginning, but I think you all have heard that. What we did was we found roughly a $200,000 error, and we added in a position, and the position we added in was the Fox Hill Assistant Principal. Again, had we seen that found those dollars ahead of the presentation, that would have been incorporated into our guideline budget initially.
So the delta, the over guideline delta is still for extraordinary circumstances?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Additional discussion? All right, we have a motion that's been seconded already too. All right, we're all here, so we can do this by a show of hands. Those in favor, raise your hand, yes? You don't have to. Those opposed? Abstain? All right.
Dramatic effect.
It was very impressive. That's 11-0-0. Thank you very much for
Thank you.
coming back.
Thank you all.
All right. And I apologize to our fire friends. We had one more request for out of order with Article 21 for economic development, placemaking, and community events. Do we have a subcommittee report on that? David or Frank?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So, John and I did the subcommittee for Town Hall 1, and on this particular thing, there's good backup for it, and hopefully you all, there's a one-sheeter. And in my minutes, actually, I gave a pretty good sort of dichotomy of this, but there were multiple things that we were trying to do to get the overlay district of the Town Hall Center to be everything it can be. There are transportation issues, there are land use issues, and there's basically marketing and sort of increasing vibrancy in the area. The transportation segment will come under things related to, MBTA and road repair and road improvements. We're not quite at that yet. The land use is all about zoning and accommodations of the proprietors that are in the area that could make better use of what we're offering through the town center opportunity. This particular piece is really to take the notion of what the pocket parks, I don't know, I don't particularly know too much about it. I see it, obviously, I haven't participated in it, but as written in the backup, it was effective. People liked it, it was used, it brought people together in maybe a modest way, but it set the example that if businesses and the town sort of get together to sponsor things that bring people on foot traffic, sit for a while, collect for a while, they start to do more in the town center. What we're really trying to do is to promote that to be a real, business district, a working area, a leisure area, a walking area. And so this money is intended to try to sort of double or triple down on the idea of the Pocket Park and create more opportunities in coordination with proprietors to make events happen, to bring more people into the town center, and to get the idea of participation in sort of a village center of Burlington. And so the idea, it certainly has, we thought, had merit, and I think Melissa might want to speak more to this because she's doing a lot of work on it. But that's the idea. And how effective this will ultimately turn out to be, you don't really know. But the indications are that it's a popular thing to bring people together in the center as best we can and to improve the accommodations in the center of town to accommodate that. So we voted 2-0 in favor, and, we'll see what happens with it if you support it. John, you might want to say more. John was really very active at 8 in the morning.
I believe Frank said it all. That was a good summary. We have with us Melissa Tentopoulos, the Economic Development Director, Paul Sagarino, Town Manager. Would you like to add anything to that? Excuse me, Town Administrator.
Give me a promotion.
I gave you a promotion. Would you like to add anything?
Thank you. I think, Frank, you captured it well. I think part of, just to add to that, part of, the work plan for the Economic Development Office is rooted in the master plan and the goals outlined by the community. And I think with regard to placemaking and activation, it's really rooted in some of the recommendations that came out of the town center economic development elements of the land use of the master plan. So I referenced it here in section E2 regarding the investment and promotion of activities to really engage people, and it also inspires kind of new thinking in what's possible. It's what we can do in the short term as we work on the other long-term strategies that relate to the roadway improvements, land use changes, in terms of interventions within individual storefronts, those are very limited. We can't change rent. We don't have ways to, provide certain subsidies to, occupy vacant space, but we can try to utilize the areas and partner with the property owners to create certain kind of activities, which we call placemaking, that kind of bring people together, increase foot traffic, and the goal is to also support business activity, in particular in our town center, because that's where we have the majority of our smaller scale neighborhood serving retail services for Burlington, as you all know. So we were fortunate enough to get a lot of the state provided us grants in a few different ways, partly because we were able to take advantage of different grants that came out of the post-COVID and the recovery efforts that the state was trying to support the different communities throughout the state. But that's how we leveraged some of the initial programming. And we got a lot of good feedback. You see the stats here. We did it 1 year, and the second year we got a greater number of people down to the town center. We got 6 local businesses, all independent restaurants, 9 businesses that participated, and to just kind of be frank, that we had a lot of interest that came back to us saying, how can we see a little bit more of this? Is there opportunities to do it either in different seasons, different locations throughout the town center? And we welcome that to be to use this model strategically to support other businesses and other things that the community really cares about. So, and that's why we thought we'd bring it to you for your consideration tonight.
Thank you. Any questions? Doug?
I don't have a question, I have a comment, and it is that when the Pocket Park thing and the beer garden was first proposed, I honestly rolled my eyes and I thought, yeah, right, there'll be 10 people there and that's kind of stupid. And, I mean, I'm just being honest. But I went and it was fantastic. It was really cool. It was a lot of fun, and it was fun from a standpoint of it felt like a community event. We have the mall area, we have 1 million restaurants, you can stand outside and play cornhole at Third Ave, or you can do that now at Common Craft, a lot of fun. But you don't feel like you're seeing your neighbors, you feel like you're seeing people from all over the place that are at the mall or going to dinner. And this really felt like a cool community event. It was nice that there were local small restaurants there. I will say that my mother-in-law is now a huge fan of halal eats, and she would have probably never tried that, and now she loves it if somebody will pick that up for her. So really promoted small business. And yeah, I've heard things about, can we do it other places? How can you get other businesses involved? So I know Mike and I even talked about, could we do it in the winter and promote Marion Tavern? Grandview Farm is a facility that people don't always see inside or whatever, and as another place, maybe we could highlight some of the town facilities. So anyway, I think it's fantastic. I was wrong, and I was glad to see it survive and do well.
Sounds like you may have one vote. Other comments?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Thank you. All right, this is for Article 21, Economic Development Placemaking Community Events for $40,000. Those in favor, raise your hand. Those opposed, abstain. That's 11-0-0. Thank you very much,
Thanks,
Melissa.
John. Thanks, committee. Thank you.
All right. Next, we're moving on to the Fire Department warrant articles. So first is Article 7-1, a fire pickup. Do we have a subcommittee report, Mike?
Yes, we do.
Excellent.
So Cheyenne and I went and talked to Steve and Andy, the chief and assistant chief, this week to review the different warrants, including the department utility pickup truck. So just looking through the capital request form, we're replacing an existing pickup truck, a smaller truck, which is a F-250, with this new utility pickup truck. Estimated project cost $110,000. Purpose, so the mechanic, the fire department mechanic currently has a truck he takes out that has tools to do repairs on site where other apparatus are going. That truck is getting older, rusting out, and needs to be replaced. And this is an upgrade from a 250 to a 350, which will bring along with it a utility body that will allow you to have toolboxes on the outside of the truck. Conceptually, sort of similar to the way the tower truck is configured, where you can kind of roll up panels and you get access to jaws of life, you get access to axes, you get access to different tools along that vehicle. Similar type of concept for this, where in the past the truck had a single toolbox in the back. You got to climb into the bed of the truck. You got one box pretty big. The tools that you want, invariably end up at the bottom, so you're trying to pull things out to get to it. This will allow more tools, access from the sides. You can have your tools separated by types of tools or types of jobs you want to do. So it'll make it easier to bring more stuff to the place that it's needed, where in the past sometimes the mechanic would have to go back to the fire station realizing he didn't have certain tool because he didn't have enough storage. and then go back, so kind of taking more time. So that's the reason for the movement from a regular pickup truck to this utility body truck. Other thing that that the truck is used for, it's also gonna have a plow on it, as the other one did, for some light plowing, not really road plowing, but to help clear out areas where fire hydrants are. The firefighters have to get in there with shovels to clear out fire hydrants, and sometimes there's so much snow around there, they use this truck to, you know, push the snow back to make it a little bit easier. You can see from the spec sheet that was included from Colonial, you know, all the kind of the components of the truck, and the total cost of, listed here, around $100,000. The subcommittee voted 2-0 to support.
Okay. We have with us Fire Chief Connerty and Assistant Chief McLean, and John Denizio, our Assistant Town Administrator, has joined us also. Would you like to add anything to that?
No, it's just a really important vehicle, and by moving from a standard pickup truck to the utility body, it's more efficient for him to work. He doesn't have to go diagnose and find what tool he needs. He can diagnose and have the tools that he wants on the truck. I mean, he can do it at headquarters, he can do it at Station 2, he can do it at the fire scene. So it's pretty important.
Okay,
You know,
thank you.
he comes to most of our fires, just in case.
Okay. Any questions or comments on this item?
I mean, I think just a quick comment, you know, it's very interesting to learn that the last one had the plow, because that's what I saw here too, and to hear the purpose totally makes sense, but good to hear that. I think my only concern about going from a 250 to 350 is gonna be gas mileage, because we're gonna significantly go down, so there's another added cost, but understanding the reasoning for the truck, I think, is the important part for that potential offset there, but that would be an added cost going from a 250 to 350.
I had a quick question. There's just one thing on the quote that references F-150 there. I just wanted to make sure that wasn't a typo of some sort. It's the Havas 2021 Ford F-150 wide-angle 24-inch long vehicle specific something or other for $895.
On the quote, John?
Yeah, on the quote.
Can you tell me what page?
Yeah, I knew you were gonna ask that. It's on page, well, of the quote, it's on the second page. Sort of about halfway down, or 1/3 way down. Look for $895.
Oh, I see it, yeah.
I just had it have a something or other.
I mean, through the chair, there is an estimated cost increase already in the quote for $5,500.
No, it's just that it says F-150. I just want to
No,
make
I
sure.
know that, I'm just saying, I wonder if there was a difference,
Oh.
if that would be able to be covered under that.
Sure. I just want to make sure you don't end up with a part that doesn't go on.
Oh, okay, yeah. I mean, this is put together by the company that knows what they're doing.
Well, anyway.
This would be like me ordering a computer piece by piece. I just want the thing to work.
Yeah, if you just put that on your list to double check with them, that
Sure.
would be great.
Yep.
So you end up with something that works there. David?
And just two very quick questions. Anything salvageable off the old truck that's being pulled over, and what do you repurpose the old truck? Or does it work?
We don't intend to repurpose it. It's pretty much rusting out.
So it's really-
and-
And it's end of life.
Only tools would get transferred over. He doesn't have many tools in there. It's basically just a standard truck.
We donate the old trucks, or just trade them in? Do we trade them in? Do we just donate them somewhere?
They go back to central maintenance, and they, if it's a usable municipal vehicle, they'll strip as many of the parts off as they can to use on, to repair other vehicles. And then typically, once it's at its furthest point, it gets sold at auction.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Okay, great. This is Article 7-1, fire pickup for $110,000. Those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? Abstained? That's 11-0-0. Next, Article 7-2 to fire bird netting has been withdrawn, I understand? Okay. And next is Article 12, the fire aerial tower truck. Yes, Mike?
Correct. So Cheyenne and I went down to Fire Station 2 to take a look at the existing tower truck to see its condition. It's a little deceiving when you look at it. It's all, the paint is shiny, it looks like it's just been waxed, the chrome is sparkling. I think that's due to the nature of the care that's given to the equipment there. It gets washed and cleaned after every run. So that cosmetic stuff looks fine. Then we took a look to see the kind of the conditions that were concerning from a rust perspective. And there were some pictures attached to the backup that shows some of the rust areas. The pictures were, I think, at a time when more stuff had been pulled out or disassembled, so there were pictures of areas that we actually couldn't see at the time. But we did see rust in a few different areas. There's something called, let me see what it's called, the torque box, which is in the back of the truck. You open these doors and then you can pull ladders out, that are running kind of the length through this space in the truck. And then around the edges of that torque box, which was, pretty big, maybe like, I don't know, at least this big, you could see rust there. And the way I understand it is that torque box is structural because the tower sits right on top of that. So that is holding all the weight and, the torque, I guess, of the ladder as it's moving in different positions. So it's got to be an extremely strong, stable part of the truck to be able to support the weight of that ladder. So we saw rust there. We saw rust on some of the pads that go down to stabilize the whole fire truck when it's going to be put in position. Kind of arms are brought out on pads, put down to stabilize the whole thing. We saw that rust, and then the chief described under the body of the truck. I didn't get down and crawl under there to look. It would have been kind of hard, but there's rust on the rails that are part of the frame, and some of those are shown in the pictures. That's probably the most concerning part that's rusted. There's been repairs that have been made to, sandblast away the rust, paint it and all that stuff. So the department's trying to keep on top of these things, but, that's just a short-term solution. You can't really stop rust like that once it starts unless you get in there and just, cut out sections and re-weld in sections that would be hard to do on the frame while the body of the truck's on it. So that, and given the age of the truck, it's a 15-year-old truck. The lead time for the new truck is 3 or 4 years. So that's putting you at 18, 19 years. If you go by the National Fire Protection Association and NFPA standard, for inspection, maintenance, testing, retirement of in-service emergency vehicles, apparatus should respond to first alarms for 15 years. After that, for the next 5 years, they're moved to a reserve status where they may be used if the primary one is down, or maybe if a town needs backup or something like that. And after 20 years of age, typically they recommend that the apparatus should be retired at that point. So kind of going by those standards and the age of the existing truck plus the conditions. The letter also talks about some hydraulic systems that had some failures and so forth. we were convinced that, that this does need to be replaced, and subcommittee voted 2-0 to approve.
Thank you. Would you like to add anything, Chief?
Again, he did a great job explaining. All of the structural pieces of the truck are rusting, not just the torsion box, from the frame rails, the outriggers. You can see in the pictures, there's rust. Underneath the aluminum piece on the white ladder, that was taken off. There's rust on the ladder itself. All of those things were addressed, and it was put back into service per the manufacturer's specifications. So the thing is, as he said, you can't repair rust. You can only scrape it away and then paint over it and treat it as the manufacturer recommends. So that's what's been done with that. But it's getting to the point where there's too many of those. The tower truck is, 30, 40 feet long. So there's 30, 40 feet of frame rail that is potential pieces of rust. So we'd be chasing our tail, trying to keep up with it.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yes.
this is recommended from free cash.
From free cash, okay. Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just add that I remember when we got this truck, thinking that, I didn't see the replacement of this truck, so we're all aging, but I do remember at that time that, once it fails a safety inspection, we're in a little bit of a pickle. We need the equipment. I think the last time, that's what happened to our aerial. It failed the safety inspection. We can't use it as an employee safety issue. And I think at that time, we had to rent or borrow or try to find a backup truck, which is not an easy thing to do in this day and age. So, with the lead time and everything, we really think it's important. It's obviously an important piece of equipment. We have some taller buildings here in town, and it's very useful for those type of events. But just wanted to add in there my recollection from the last time when we purchased this vehicle. It was a similar type thing. It was failing on some of these inspections, and it becomes an employee safety issue, and we just don't want to put our employees in that type of code. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Mike?
I forgot to add one part that you reminded me today with your email, Mr. Chairman. So I had asked about the estimates. It's kind of a very short estimate from the manufacturer. And the reason for that is that they basically were going back to the same company that made the current tower truck. And they basically say, okay, do you want, the same type of equipment, same type of truck, same type of layout? And we said yes. So they used that to create the estimate that was given. So there may be some changes, like rearranging of seats or changing the cab layout, but for the most part, it's going to look the same and operate the same, which is a good thing for people that are used to being able to get the stuff right away, in emergencies. There may be some new technology or options that the chief will consider, but that's in general why there's not a whole long list. Once we have agreement from the town that we're going to move forward with this, then the manufacturer can kind of get into more details. But I guess the normal process is that happens once we get a little further in. And there's also, I guess, an allowance for certain equipment, tools, and that type of stuff that also is built into that, so they can replace some of the axes or whatever that are on the old truck that have been in use for 15 years. But I wanted to explain why the spec sheet was so short.
Thank you. Is this a competitive bid, or is there like only one fire truck manufacturer in the world, or?
There's more.
There's more than one, yes.
Okay, so it will be competitive then at least.
Semi-competitive?
Semi-competitive,
Like I say,
yeah.
It's
We'll-
one of those things where this is the manufacturer that we use for our equipment, so it's, I don't wanna say proprietary, but, you know, it's, all the trucks are similar, they're set up in a, as Mike mentioned, in a particular way that's designed by the department as to how they currently operate, so everybody knows how to use, where everything is on every piece of equipment. We don't have a bunch of different trucks set up in different ways so that people have to scramble for different pieces of equipment because it's located in a different area. Is that a good summary, Chief?
Yeah, thank you.
Understood, thank you. Brad?
Thank you. So I don't know if I was, I don't know if I heard right, or maybe I got my math wrong, but it sounded like, so certainly this equipment would have been in the 10-year capital plan. Is this, because of the rust, is this moving it up a little bit? Or, but if, from what Mike was saying about lifetime of these vehicles, sounds like it's pretty much on schedule.
Yes, 15 years is the recommended usage of the frontline piece. With the fire engines, the pumpers, we have 4. We use 2 as frontline. We have a third that is an immediate backup, and then we have 1 reserve. With the tower, we don't have any aerial reserves, so when it goes, we need just replace it. We have never had a second tower or aerial apparatus, so,
$2 million apiece.
yeah. I mean, it would take buying one every 7 or 8 years to keep that schedule of 15 years or so.
Would we have, if we did that, would we even have storage room for it?
With the new fire station, we would.
Okay.
And one of the reserve apparatus fire engines, we could actually retire that. Instead of storing that, we could have 2, one aerial at headquarters, 1 aerial at Station 2. But we're not proposing that. That's,
But just something for the committee to keep in mind, right? And then I have a naive question for the administration. So on the 2 million, do we put so if this goes through, do we, when we place the order, put down, 10%, 25%, and then pay the remainder on delivery, or how does that work?
When you order a big piece like this?
Yep.
Yeah, you have to put a deposit down, then you have milestone payments, and you pay for the whole thing when you get it.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you.
A question, just out of interest, how many buildings in town are tall enough to necessitate an aerial or tower truck?
practically everyone.
So it's applicable
Because
to all.
it's not just the aerial ladder, it carries a lot of ground ladders.
Okay.
The fire engines have 1 ground ladder, and if we'll go to a 2,000 square foot home, fire on the 2nd floor, we want to throw ladders to every side of that building, and the fire engine only has 1.
Okay.
Second fire engine will have a second one. The ladder has, the tower has storage for more ground ladders. And the engines themselves are limited in the tools that they can carry. So the tower, it has a lot of the power saws that the engines don't carry. So it's kind of a rolling toolbox, as people have said. So,
All right, thank you.
So mine's gonna go off of what was just said. So 100 feet is roughly, what, 10 stories? And my question is that actually enough with the new development we've had in town? Is there, I think the largest can be roughly up to 20 stories for an aerial truck. So if we're looking at a brand new truck and the development we currently have / maybe having coming up, is the 10 stories, the 100 feet enough? Or should we have been looking at something that has a ladder truck that's higher than that?
we think it's adequate. Most of the tall buildings have fire escape, not fire escape stairwells that are rated for evacuation. So that, it doesn't necessitate us to use it for rescue in that case. And for an aerial stream, you know, an elevated 100-foot aerial stream, it can shoot up even higher.
Yep.
But it's typically not what we do in a high-rise fire. We actually go right up to the floor with the hose and tie into the fire department piping that's in there.
So the other question is, on the quote, it says no pump, it says no pump, does that mean it's not coming with the pump itself?
Right. We don't have a pump on our tower.
Okay.
It has an inlet for a water stream that goes from the rear of the truck all the way to the top. So we can use it as a master stream, a large diameter device, or we can split off, say, you know, there was a fire on the mall on the roof. We could throw it to the roof and split off hand lines off of that.
Steve?
In terms of the waiting period for delivery, is 3 to 4 actually extended from the last time, or?
Yeah, over the course of, you know, COVID and all that, supply chain and, you know, the economy, and just people weren't buying them, now they're buying them, you know, engines and ambulances and towers, just, they're backed up with orders because there was a slowdown, and now they're back up to, you know, taking orders again at a regular clip. Maybe
So it's
even-
something we have to watch out for as other pieces of equipment age. We need to make sure that we're paying attention to the wait times as well.
Yes, yep.
Okay, thanks.
Just briefly, point of interest, the tallest building in town, I believe, is the Charles River Building at the end of District Ave, which is 105 feet. And when we reworked the IH district, we lowered that, if memory serves, to 95. So it's not going to get taller.
Just made it.
Which building was that?
The Charles River Building that's in the
Oh,
IH district, right up
okay,
against the
yeah.
highway.
I know
Bay
which
Bank
one now.
It's
The
Bay
Bay
Bank,
Bank,
sorry,
yeah.
How many
sorry.
years ago?
Yeah, yeah.
Or thank you.
That would have
Next to
indicated.
Aldi's.
Sure, sure. District F.
Motion to approve?
Second.
I do have to ask one question. When we bought the last tower truck, if I recall correctly, we found out that it didn't fit into Bay because it was a little too high due to the geometry of the driveway going up or something. Had to get, you know, fancy pants, low profile tires and so forth. Do we have some mechanism in place to ensure that this one will not be too high without going to extremes?
Well, currently, it's at Station 2, and those, we won't have a problem there. Those are higher garage doors, taller.
How much margin do we have, just out of curiosity? I hate to be picky, but at $2
Oh.
million, I hate to get it wrong.
We have feet,
Okay,
Like,
so
yeah.
we'd have to really screw up for it to not fit.
yeah.
So we have no risk of storing it anytime
Heard it
soon.
here first, I'm writing this
Yeah.
down. All right,
Yeah,
thanks.
we will make an attempt for it to be able to be housed at headquarters in the same bay that it was formerly housed, the one that had to be, you know, raised up, so.
Is the intention to put it in which station?
It'll be at Station 2,
Okay.
but just in case we do get a second tower ladder sometime
have the
down the road,
flexibility.
someplace for it to put it.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, we have a motion. This is Article 12, Fire Aerial Tower Truck for $2 million from free cash. Those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? Abstain? All right, that's 11-0-0. Next is Article 16, transfer from the ambulance receipts reserve to purchase an ambulance. Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, again, Cheyenne and I talked about this one with the chief and assistant chief. And just kind of a heads up, Articles 16, 17, and 18 are all similar in that they're all transferring out of this reserve receipt account for the ambulance, reserve receipt for ambulance account. So for, just kind of looking at the backup that got added, there's a note from John Denizio in there, kind of talks about the history of the receipts for reserved appropriation account that was created in May of 2019 as a way to take funds from ambulance services and store it in this account that could then be used to offset costs associated with operating the ambulance services. This was all tied into our transition to provide advanced life support versus basic life support, where we used to get the advanced life support from a separate company. We kind of talked about this in the budget discussion for the fire department, how we're collecting more money now, and it's going into this account. The good news is we're generating more revenue into the account than the expenses were to offer the ALS service. So we have a little bit of extra in there that we're going to use for certain things, and we're seeing some of that here, where specifically for Article 16, we're going to take $485,000 out of this fund and use it to purchase a new frontline ambulance. And as you can see in the article, there's 3 ambulances. There's the frontline, there's a reserve ambulance, and then there's a third ambulance that's used if one of the 2 main ambulances are taken out of service for maintenance or repair work. So what we end up doing is replacing an ambulance roughly every 5 years, because similar to the other apparatus, the recommendation is the useful life of an ambulance is 15 years. So what we'll do is we'll take this transfer by an ambulance, that will become, basically ambulance 1, the frontline ambulance, and then the other ones will move down the line, and we'll retire the current A3, which is the reserved ambulance. Yeah, so that's the mechanism that we're using. Again, the information on the pricing of the ambulance, we have a letter here from Greenwood, talks about the proposal price for an ambulance. It's got a little more detail, I'd say, than the tower truck, but it's a similar thing where we're basically going to be speccing this out similar to what A1 is specced out currently, also A3, by kind of a strange combination of events. A2 was a little bit of a different model, which I think it worked out for the town because we were able to get that ambulance quicker. It was available, but it makes things more complicated because it's a little different than the other one. So now you got, crews using the ambulance, and this one's a little bit different. So in any case, the new ambulance is going to be spec'd like A1 and A3, so they understand what they need to do. They provided us the estimate here, and that covers the amount that's going to be transferred. The subcommittee voted 2-0 in favor of this.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to add anything, Chief?
No, I mean, I just know that the town has made a commitment to the ALS service, and, we're just continuing to, year after year, except for the, 2020, increase the number of runs that we do. This ambulance has the miles that we typically see in a 5-year ambulance after three years. frontline ambulance, so we definitely are just getting busier and busier year after year, so.
What do you attribute that to?
The population in town, I mean, I couldn't tell you the reason why there are more calls. I just know that there are. There's more apartments in town, more businesses in town, just, you know, the impact of growth.
Thank you. Doug?
So, I'm interested. How does it work? A1 is the primary ambulance, it's right here.
Yeah,
It's ALS.
yeah.
So when a call comes in, if both ambulances are sitting idle, it always goes first?
Yes.
Or is it somehow triaged based on what the call is?
Yeah, so the way we operate, at Station 2, A2 is cross-manned with the tower. The tower has 4 people assigned to it. If A2 were to go out first, then the tower would only have 2 people assigned to it at that moment. So we try and keep 4 guys on the tower as much as possible. So A1 goes out first, and, you know, quite often A2 is also going out. So it's a hope that we have 4 people on the tower,
Right.
but we usually have 2. What we used to do before we expanded the department was, if we had a fire alarm call, we would have no ambulances available. The tower would go with 2 guys. The engine that was cross-manned with A1 would go with 2 guys, and we wouldn't have anybody. Now that we've expanded the department, we reserve 2 guys. They're always on A1, available to respond on the ambulance. And they may respond to a fire on the ambulance, but they're not taking a fire truck. They're
The ambulance is
Yeah.
then at the fire, yeah.
Yep.
And so for revenue, when A2 goes out, we can't bill as a ALS call.
No.
It'd be-
It's,
Yeah,
we're getting to the point where we have enough paramedics that A2 could be ALS, but because it isn't, we don't have enough medics at Station 2 all the time.
okay.
You know, we're ramping up. We have enough to run A1.
So by the time this ambulance comes, in 3 to 4, however, it's a crazy lead time,
Oh, yeah, and,
then you should be able to staff it as ALS, and we'd have 2.
yeah, that's the goal, is
Yeah.
to have both ambulances ready to go ALS, yeah, at all times.
Okay, thank you.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Thank you. All right, this is Article 16, transfer from ambulance receipts reserve to purchase an ambulance for $485,000. Those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? Abstained? It's 11-0-0 in favor. All right, the next one is Article 17, transfer from ambulance receipts reserve to offset the FY '24 budget. Mike?
Correct. So exactly kind of what I described earlier. This is the second of 3 articles that are transferring from receipts reserved for ambulance. This time it's going to offset the budget, the fiscal year '24 budget, to offset the costs of providing ALS that come from, expenses for running that, for expenses and stipends and so on and so forth, training materials. So we're covering that additional expense with this $360,000 out of the reserve account. We'll see the same thing for the next one as well, but that's the mechanics behind it, and again, we supported this 2-0.
anything additional on that?
Yeah, just to add one thing of where did we come up with that amount of money? It was, in case it's not clear in the memo, that the additional expenses that we've tracked that data for a couple of years now, so we're pretty comfortable that the additional expenses for providing the service have been about 350, 375 grand. For the last few years, we've just been absorbing those in the operating budget, and to make sure that the revenues were gonna outpace that. And the data shows that the revenues are between 450 and 500,000, so clearly it is. And it just so happens that then there's, if we transfer at this rate going forward, there's a delta between the revenues and the expenses that would be able to fund other things like the ambulance and anything else that comes out, assuming that both revenues and expenses grow at the same rate. So I just don't want to think we just picked a number. So,
No,
and
your memo is very helpful, thank you.
and the reason, you know, for the next article for 23, just to get ahead of it, one's for 24, obviously for next year, which we talked about. And when we were here talking about the operating budget and our overtime woes, we talked about we have a partial solution that will come to you in the form of an article. So that's that. We have absorbed those $360,000 worth of costs in this operating budget already. We transfer it in for this year, and it helps with the, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollar overtime problem we had that we were here to talk to you about in the operating budget, so.
Thank you. Brad?
So I guess with that clever trick that my question is answered, I was trying to think, how do we think in terms of increase in the fire department budget with this? But if we added 360 this year and 360 last year, it's a wash. And so you're saying that when we compare FY '23 to FY '22, we see that the shortfall in the overtime. Right. So, okay, so I think I've got it. All right, thank you.
Frank?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I'm just confused. What's the total amount of money that you have in this?
In the fund right now,
Yeah.
there's about just over 2 million. It's on that other sheet
Oh,
that
I'm
says
sorry.
special revenues.
Okay, all right.
And that's because we haven't used any of it
Right.
since we started collecting it.
So what we're gonna do is, we're gonna take out 485, then 360 and 360, 3 and 6. So we're taking, and that leaves some amount of money, a pretty good amount.
Yep.
But going forward, I don't think there'd be enough to do the staffing offset and the ambulance 5-year rotation.
Well, so annually, there's about 125,000 more of revenues than expenses that we're offsetting the
Right,
budget
and
with.
so-
So 5 years,
Okay. so
100,000,
All right.
and we're gonna have, you know, 900,000 right now
Buffer.
after these transfers.
Buffer. So you're thinking that it will run pretty level, paying for one ambulance as you go, plus staffing offset each year?
Yes, yeah, I think that the balance will grow.
Yeah, okay, that's good. It's, just as a comment, it's way better than I thought it would be. I was pretty nervous when you first proposed this, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, that it would actually turn out to be a money problem. Not problem, but it just wouldn't pay for itself. It's worked out better than I thought it would. Are the insurance rates going up that's helping with this? Are you collecting more because rates are going up?
Well, we have the same, we haven't approved new rates in a couple of years.
Interesting. Who determines the rate that you can get on an ALS call?
It's voted by the select board, but very often it's set by Medicare, you know, so most of the rides, I forget the percentage of it, but it's over 60% of it, end up at the Medicare max.
Medicare,
So it doesn't matter what our rate is, that's the max.
and you don't bill above Medicare?
You do, your original bill goes out above Medicare, but it's adjusted down to the max.
You can bill all you want.
You
can
can bill whatever you want.
Thank you.
With the additional paramedics over the next few years and A2 being available as ALS, those revenues will also increase. Because a lot of the calls are only being billed at BLS, and if we need ALS for that call, it's, you know, a split with the ALS provider.
If you can get the staffing and, you know, stay up at that full ALS level, then the billing will probably balance it again. So it's a good thing to do if we can get there. The sooner the better, probably. Thank you.
I don't think the billing or the service is gonna be the problem, the staffing's gonna be.
Yeah, that appears to be the case at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just curious, just to make sure I understand, so for FY '24, the 360K, I think, was baked into the budget where we sort of assumed that this was coming in to make the FY '24 budget work out, right?
No, so it would be, there would be a little bit of a hole without that 360.
Yeah, so we had sort of assumed that, I think, when the budget was made, but when the FY '23 budget was made, I don't think that was assumed. And-
Right.
And so that,
It's
so
that.
the application FY '23, getting ahead of ourselves a little on the article here, is basically covering an unexpected shortfall, which you're saying is overtime is a large component of that.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
Motion to approve?
Second.
All right, so this is for the first of the two, Article 17, transfer ambulance receipts reserve to offset the FY '24 budget for $360,000. Raise your hand if in favor. Opposed? Abstain? That's 11-0-0. All right, next is Article 18, which we sort of discussed, but is transfer ambulance receipts reserved for offsetting the FY '23 budget. Did you have anything additional on that, Mike?
It's the easiest article I've ever had to explain. It's like the last one, but a different year. And the subcommittee voted 2-0 in support.
Well said.
Sure you don't want to use reserve fund transfer for this.
Did you want to add anything to that one?
No, thank
I think we covered it. All right, any questions we didn't ask on the last one we want to ask now?
Motion to approve?
Thank you. All right, so this is Article 18, transfer ambulance receipts reserve to offset FY '23 budget for $360,000. Raise your hand in favor. Opposed? Abstained? 11-0-0. Thank you. All right, I think that is all the fire department articles. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
It's great to see you.
Thank you, guys.
Stay safe.
All right, we're now moving on.
Hope we never have to call you.
Yes. Hopefully we can make it through the meeting without an emergency. Going on to the Town Hall 1 related articles. First is Article 2, transfer various accounts. That's been withdrawn, I understand. Okay. Article 4 is transfer from free cash stabilization, which is also withdrawn. Is that correct? Article 5 is transfer from free cash to OPEB trust fund, which has been withdrawn. Good, still getting nods. Yes.
John did a great job. He just withdrew everything.
Don't worry, we'll make up for that with Article 6.
I didn't fight that one?
Is funding the revolving accounts, which should really be called authorizing the limits on the revolving accounts. Do we have a report on that from Town Hall 1, Frank?
Yes, we do, Mr. Chairman.
Excellent. Let us have
By
it.
the way, John retains his mantle as the revolving account guru. He missed no dots. So there's a list here of, I don't know, 10 or so revolving accounts that fall under the auspices of the administration. And what we have to do every year is approve the spending limits. That's a governor that kind of creates a little bit of a check and balance of the purpose of the account, the money coming in, the money going out, is it staying in, equilibrium? And you get to check it every year. There were a handful of them that the administration feels that the limits are just too low to serve the purpose of the account. And I can't for the life of me find the sheet of paper with the list, but I'm sure you've got it somewhere.
Want to use mine, Frank?
All right, so we were asked to increase the limits on what's called the backflow prevention or cross-connection account up to 100,000. What we really have to do is we spend, time and materials, and we go out and we service the operation to survey what's out there. And so there's more activity. the recyclable materials, so basically it's to cover our purchase of bins and other things that go into the recycle program, and then we collect monies back when we sell them. So it's a revolving account, but the amount that we need to be able to cover is just greater than the 75,000. And these are to make safe limits. This isn't as if there's a problem. It's to kind of have a buffer so there isn't a problem. Seal of weights and measures, I think you all know that we kind of revamped that program. We do a co-town consulting kind of thing. And the cost of that is definitely going to be probably more. So we bumped that one up, and then the local transportation, that's, as it says there, to ensure that we can cover the costs on the town's ride share. And we know that the ridership's going up, which is a good thing. And these all seem like pretty reasonable numbers. And the others, there didn't seem to be a problem, although John may have some comments. He spent a lot more time on this than I did. So that's basically it. It's mostly housekeeping and adjustments for spending needs. And we voted 2-0. Thank you, John.
Would you like to add anything to that, John?
No. Believe it or not, this is actually easier than the way we used to do it. Luckily, this change was made 5 or 6 years ago, maybe 7 years ago now. So we had to create a bylaw and add those
Changes.
revolving accounts into the bylaw, which sets a spending limit and a carryover limit. And this is actually much easier. You see it every year, so.
And just ultimately, we're always limited to the amount of money that's collected or is in the fund, so.
No going
That's
negative.
the ultimate limitation on the fund.
Excellent. And I'll just throw in there, while not strictly part of this article, it's a good time to discuss if anyone wants to. On the website, there is a summary of all the special revenue accounts, if anyone wants to go through that. I've already gone through it.
Can't help
Thank goodness
myself,
for you
John.
guys. All right.
He's a glutton for punishment.
Any questions or comments on these?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Okay.
But Mr. Chairman, in fairness to John, we really did kind of go through. We looked at ones that had bigger numbers, kind of did a housekeeping, how do these all look, and they're all explainable, which is a good thing to do.
Right, so just to expand on it, we did specifically go through things with large balances or things where the revenue and expenses were mismatched, just to see if there's anything alarming coming up, or if that indicated something of interest. So, yeah, Mike?
Just a quick question. So all the previous articles that were withdrawn, we're not transferring funds for those things? Did I miss something along the way?
Yes, I think the implication of them being withdrawn is that you have no interest in transferring things this year for those accounts.
Yeah, I think we put the placeholder on for the OPEB and stabilization before we have our conversation with Town Hall 1 to see where we are with free cash and what the feeling is there. And then, as was the last couple of years, if there's no inclination to make that transfer, we withdraw it.
Oh, okay, all right. We're still funding OPEB, we're just not
Correct.
adding above.
Separate article.
Yeah,
Yes.
so we're doing
Beyond, okay.
$1,018,000.
I get it, okay.
Just in a general sense, I think
for asking.
from an administration standpoint, we want to prioritize using free cash to positively impact our debt situation, given the big ticket items we have coming forward. So that's our priority. I don't want to speak for Town Hall 1, but some of those, they're all good options, as I like to say, to help the town's financial picture. But from our standpoint, given the big ticket items we have coming down the pike, we feel as though utilizing our free cash to keep debt off the debt schedule, et cetera, is our priority. But again, those other options are good options as well. It just, from our standpoint, we prioritize the debt aspect of things.
Great. And just since you said the magic word OPEB for the large audience at home, I'll just mention that we used to fund it strictly through warrant articles, but now it's been baked, the 9-ish or 9.5% a year increasing amount is baked into the budget, so it no longer has to be a warrant article. This was just additional if we decide to go above and beyond that.
9.3.
What's that?
9.3.
Thank you. All right. Right.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, so out of fairness to the committee, we didn't bring to the committee for a vote, what do you want to superfund OPEB with? What we did bring to the committee was the operating budget for the annual increase. Remember, it goes up every year to fund OPEB according to a schedule of amortization or debt liability reduction. And we're going to get and every 2 years, we get a full assessment, an actuarial assessment. And remember, that's a model and a numbers game, right? So it gives you a pretty good idea of what you think the model was or should be, and how did you perform against it, and what's the going forward picture look like. You'll see that probably in September, would be my guess. Would you agree, guys? Yeah. So we'll get an update on how that's doing. Tied to that is, it would be fine to use free cash for OPEB, but as the administration is telling us, we're coming into some significant debt schedule concerns and opportunities. So we're going to be spending a lot more money on servicing debt than we've been accustomed to in the not-too-distant future. So they lobbied pretty hard to hold back as much free cash as we could, and even ARP money, come to that, so that we could utilize it to plug holes in borrowing, and rather than borrow, pay it off up front, or at least lower the borrowing. We agreed with that as a subcommittee. We didn't even vote on the withdrawal, I don't think. No, we didn't. But, out of fairness to all of you, if somebody thinks that's a bad idea, now's the time to probably yell at us. The other thing I wanted to say on stabilization, we've talked about it a lot here. I forget, how much is in that? 10, yeah, and it's growing. And we're asking the administration to come up, and John's thought about this too, a formulaic way to say, how big should stabilization be relative to what you are? And what we are is an operating budget and risks and, other things that might say, how much money do I want in a rainy day fund in case it does what we don't want to happen, but does. It rains when you weren't expecting it. That number's pretty big at $10 million, and we've not had much of an issue. Anytime we've drawn on it, we've replenished it right away. We did that this past January, I think, right? Yep. So we had no appetite to put any more money into that, especially in light of debt service coming up. And you'll get into more of that a little bit this year, and we're going to be getting into that a lot more next year, I'm pretty sure. So that was the rationale. But out of fairness to the committee, you're all, everybody has a view on this stuff. This does matter. That's the way we played it so far. Okay?
Thank you. I think we've had a motion on Article 6 here already, right?
It's been a while, yeah.
Yeah, hard to remember. All right, so this is for Article 6 to fund or authorize the limits on the revolving accounts. Those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? Abstained? It's 11-0-0. Let's see, next is Article 19, fund the administrative and professional comp plan. That's been withdrawn, deferred, since it's still under negotiation. Hopefully,
43 people just had a heart attack.
we decided not to do it. That will hopefully happen before next week's meeting. So keep your fingers crossed on that one. Next is Article 20, sick time buyback. Do we have something on that, Frank?
Yeah, again, John and I sat in with the administration. So this is an unusual year, and it's explained in the backup, that they're anticipating a larger than typical flow of retirees over the next maybe 48 months. And so the way the buyback works is if an employee is going to retire, gives a one-year notice, then contractually they're entitled to sell unused sick time. And so we have to cut, that's actually a standing liability to the town and to every business that has programs like that. So because the number is big enough, potentially, Normally, they would cover this out of the combination of negotiated settlements, delaying a hire to replace the person that's retiring, open a hole in the operating budget, move some money around, and they can do the buybacks of, one or two people in stride. This is big enough that there's no stride long enough to cover it if it all happens the way they think it, I won't say likely, but it's likely enough that they want to put into, it's the account, it's called the
It's called the accrued liability.
accrued liability account. We created that account with the school department, I think, 2 years ago, maybe? And there they accrue money for the same kind of program. They're choosing to use that account, have a section of it for an accrued liability for these buybacks, and just to put $500K into it out of free cash, correct?
Correct.
Correct. So what we're asking to do here is set aside $500,000 of free cash that will probably, most of it will probably get consumed over the next 2 to 4 years doing contractual buybacks as people retire, primarily out of the fire department, I think. So we voted 2-0 in favor of it. I don't see any way out of this. It's contractual, and I can't see playing Russian roulette with the operating budget, so that's what we did.
And one of the things that by doing this, what it buys us is also if those retirements stagger a little bit and go over the course of a fiscal year, if we did this in the operating budget, we would lose the money and then have to come back and ask for it again when we asked for it the year before. So by putting it here, it can't be used without the authorization of the town administrator. And if it doesn't happen and people work all that time, well, the money will stay there and be used when it is. But if it is this unprecedented amount of retirements, the money's there and we don't have to delay hiring 6 to 8 firefighters.
We're paying it eventually.
So this benefit that they have in their contracts from a long time ago, folks that were hired before, I changed it a little bit in 2005. They were able to shave it back a little bit, but it's a good amount of sick hours they're allowed to store up over their career and buy back at the end. And it's the equivalent of about 42 weeks of work, so it's significant.
Questions? David?
I think you answered the question, but I'm gonna ask it a different way. So by setting the money aside, we've got a fair amount of free cash right now, setting it aside and then utilizing it for these expenses as the years go on, as they retire. People aren't giving enough notice that, I was thinking, why don't we just do this year to year? And we know what the numbers are, so each year we go through and say, we have 100 this year, another 100 next year, what have you. But I don't think people are giving that much notice that well in advance, so that we can wait until we know how much money will be each year. So by slugging it all in an account now, we can manage those people that are leaving when they leave. Is that a fair way to?
Well, in this particular department, in order to get that many hours buyback, they have to give you a year notice.
A year notice,
A year
okay.
notice, but a year can also mean after we've set the budget, but before the next fiscal year ends,
Right.
so.
So my original question, why not just do an annual warrant?
It may be the case. We just haven't had this many people retire at the same time from one department.
Right.
Where we can, normally if 6 people retire in a year, but it's in 6 different departments, we can do what we normally do and use all the leverage we have to delay the hiring, use some money from somewhere else, maybe negotiated settlements. But this may be the case. We talked about it in the subcommittee a little bit, that this might be how we fund this going forward. Not sure.
Right.
One other thing I'd like to point out, I think some people might be getting the impression that this is some sort of a big gimme. But remember, when people really don't use sick time, it means that you're not having to cover any overtime for those situations. So it's an incentive as well to, stay on the job, and you compensate them in the end. And it's fair, it's one-for-one compensation, if I'm not mistaken. So it's not a bad program, it's a good program, but it's unusual to get this many to stack up in one, retirement window. I don't think we've ever seen this before.
No, not since I've been here.
Right, so who knows, okay?
And these folks have been here, all, if they're at retirement time, they've been here at least 32 years. So they've obviously had a pretty healthy.
I just wanted to add on a little bit to David's question there. I think the reason, there's two reasons it makes sense to put in an accrued liability account rather than putting into a warrant. I tend to think of warrants as authorizing spending that we may or may not do depending on whether the warrant passes. Whereas this is money we've already spent in that it's an accrued liability and so we need to fund it. So trying to fund it year to year versus when you know, it's sort of like OPEB, you know you've accrued the liability, we're putting the money aside to pay for it. And obviously keeping it out of the operating budget keeps that from fluctuating all over the place for something that, you know, can vary a lot each year, and you wouldn't want to base your budgets off of that. That was my thinking.
Not the operating budget, but again, the accrued liability, where you're just funding it in, you could do an accrued liability advance each year, once you know what your number is gonna be. So
Yes.
this one, we're just saying, we're gonna put it in and we'll use it till it's gone, and I agree with not keeping it in the operating budget, I think it's outside of the operating budget, something like this. But that's the basis of my question, which, we don't know what the number is. We'll know each year what the number is.
Fair enough.
And it will be an actual number that's being spent.
That's true. Doug?
Does it pay out at their, I assume it pays at their current pay when they retire?
Yes.
So I'm not sure that a 32-year-old sick day makes up for the overtime that you missed paying 32 years ago.
There's a little power of compounding there.
That's a little scary. And number two, do they accrue sick time while they're out on work comp?
Injured on duty, yes. Injured off duty, no.
Injured off duty should be using sick time.
Right. So if they're out on, what's it called, non-occupational sick time, and weren't getting paid, they wouldn't. So if they didn't have sick time, then they wouldn't accrue anymore. But you answer your question, on workers' comp, yes.
Brad?
I actually have three questions. Do the bond rating agencies ding us on that liability? Is that just, it's shorter money than some of the other outstanding liabilities that not something they pay attention to?
So it's in our audit report, it's called compensated absences. It's basically what you have to do to the audit and give it, and put it in your financials to say, if we were to end business today, how much do we owe everybody for their earned time? So that is reported in your financials, but everybody has to report it, and everybody has a similar number. So do they see it? Yes. Is it get pulled out specifically like OPEB? No.
Okay. And then, are we allowed to negotiate caps on the accumulation? I know my company is very draconian about maxing out accrual, or is there law saying we've got to?
Like I say, I think some of the aspects of some of our contracts are unfavorable to the town. They were negotiated a long time ago in good faith with the unions and the employees. You know, if you think back how long ago these benefits were negotiated, some of these things were really cheap at the time. And it wasn't when, I mean, I'm not that old, but, you know, people often talk about, you know, the year that, hey, we can't afford to give you a 3% raise, but we'll give you a 2% raise, and we'll give you this thing called health insurance. And it was very, very cheap and cost-effective and a good benefit at the time. So a lot of these things, again, could we negotiate more caps? Yes, probably we would have to offset that with higher wage increases. So it's money, it would be money to get out of it. It's a good benefit for the employees, obviously, and they're certainly not going to give it up without something on the other side.
Oh, sure. But that's a segue to my third question then. So you've talked about pressures in hiring. Certainly if we've got lots of retirements, that's even more pressure on hiring. You said the current thinking is to look at our salary scales again. Is that still in the works? And are you planning on, will you have anything to present to town meeting in September, or are we just going to? I've heard a case made that this is just a temporary phenomenon. If we just be patient for a year or two, this problem will go away, but what's the current thinking?
Well, the problem isn't a wage problem for us. It's just a supply problem. You know, there just aren't enough folks that do that job, because we have to have firefighter, paramedic, not firefighter, EMT, or not just paramedic. It's got to be both because of the ALS.
Our wages at the fire department are competitive, not necessarily townwide, but it's not the wage that's causing us a problem to hire at the fire department.
But you mentioned clerk positions, for example, where you used to get 100 applications, now you get 5 or 6.
Certainly in other departments and other positions, that's definitely something we'll be looking at going forward, just to make sure that we're competitive compared to our competition, the other communities. Definitely not a lot of folks out there with an interest of going into municipal work. Again, aside from the fire department issues, I consider that to be pretty separate. And we're a very complicated town. This isn't a Carlisle or a primarily residential town. We have a big booming business community, so we really need top-of-the-line employees. So as we move forward, we're doing a compensation study right now through a grant for the administrative and professional plan, our department heads and middle managers. We hope to have that done by the fall, with hopefully with some recommendations out of that, and at least a roadmap to let us know where we might be a little bit low, where we might be, okay in terms of the administrative and professional staff. But, we've been working also closely with the unions during the last negotiation, and, we're starting to see some of those positions sort of fall behind. We've had postings that have been out there for months now. Nurse at the Board of Health comes to mind. We can't find CDL drivers, public works and things of that nature. So, we're looking at it from a variety of different ways in terms of not just the compensation, but, what are some ways that we can bring candidates here and maybe assist them with getting a CDL license once they've been here. So we're looking at all options in order to make sure that we can, properly staff the town with, qualified employees.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Additional?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Thank you. All right, this is Article 20, sick time buyback for $500,000 from free cash. Those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? Abstained? It's 11-0-0. Next is Article 23, diversity, equity, and inclusion training. Frank?
There's a one-paragraph document from Nick Priest that you all have. We talked about this in the subcommittee, and I went into it a little bit concerned, but there's a real distinction between what they're trying to do with this and what Human Resources is doing with a program that we also funded for staff. This is strictly, so a report was done, a standing committee was, not standing, a committee was formed for a year. They did a DEI analysis, produced a report, and that's ended. But what left, I think the selectmen felt like they were left in a situation where, in the administration, where it's just not actionable. We haven't actually nailed down what do we want to change in the way of policies, procedures, guidelines. How do we actually make progress on being a better community in terms of diversity and, equity and that sort of thing. This is to bring in someone as a consultant to help really kickstart the process of actually defining and working with elected officials on what you need to be thinking about and what you need to be doing in order to make real progress and actionable things relative to all of this. Diversity programs, hiring practices, equity might be in terms of how people are utilized within a department. And I suppose you have to also think about when there are problems, resolution, proper resolution. So it's all of those kinds of things. And the selectmen voted in favor of this, the administration. I I specifically question these gentlemen on, are you really in favor of doing this? Because what I worry about is, it's three letters, DEI, and everybody wants to do something about it, but something isn't any good unless it has, content, meat, and you could describe that as actionable, you could describe that as concrete things that are written down, discussed, put into place, training that actually affects the way we behave or do things as an organization, as a government. So that's what this is for. It's for the administration and the selectmen to put to work to put a program like that together, and it's a starting point. The committee has pretty much done its job. That report is, it's there, but it doesn't give us what we need at this point. So we voted 2-0 in favor, and that's my interpretation. Others may have other ideas they want to throw into this, because this is a little bit amorphous, right?
Anything additional from the administration?
I think Frank did a perfect job just sort of covering the general concept of what the article is.
Right, and one thing we did discuss it in the subcommittee is this is distinct from what's in the HR budget for doing training of employees. This is really looking at a higher level and coming up with policies and what approach we want to take on things. Questions or discussion? Chris?
I have a couple, but the selectmen took a vote on this. What was their vote?
The selectmen?
Yeah.
I believe it was 5-0.
5-0. I think my comment is I was frustrated this wasn't part of the standing select board budget with trainings that need to happen, because my guess is going to be this is not going to be a one-time thing. This is going to be another. What I brought up when this was up in HR, which it seems like it is in this warrant article as well, is you can't force anyone to go to it. This says to any and all, meaning an invitation, much like which HR sounded like it was as well, was we can't require people to attend. And that's frustrating when we're trying to make progress and have people have an equal playing field and equal knowledge when coming into a town that's trying to do this. When you start in school districts, you can be required to attend professional development. I would hope that us as well could be able to say to our employees, you're required to attend this. So I was frustrated when HR brought this up, because I'm very much in favor of this. I think this town very much needs this type of information as well. And, I think my last point would be, if this is invited, it will be up to the voters to then hold our elected accountables if they are the ones that are attending or not, because that's going to be the ultimate people that will take that attendance and see who did choose to go and who did not. But I do think that this continues to be needed, and if anyone watches the debates and the conversations that happen within that subcommittee and at the select board over the past year, there is an incredible need for not just this, but for so much more.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I could just make a couple points. The reason it wasn't included in the operating budget is because it's going to be more than just the select board and that office going to it. Hopefully, it'll be all elected officials. So that's one reason. The distinction between this and what's in the operating budget for HR is that it's basically 1 day of training for 30 folks. And then the last point about we can't require any union members to go to it, but the other folks that aren't in a union can be strongly urged to go to any training we ask them to. So we'll work on that.
Additional?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Thank you. All right, this is Article 23, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Training for $20,000. Those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? Abstain? That's 11-0-0. Next is, we'll vote on these as two separate numbers, but talk about them together, are the accommodated account for debt, principal, and interest. Frank?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. From the point of view of what's this about, this is about as simple as it gets. We've got loans, and you need to pay the principal and the interest like the mortgage on your house, and I'm pretty sure we're not going to default on any of these. So these are programs that are already in flight. And the increase, it is increased by, I think it was 7.66% overall, and that's driven by, more borrowing that was put into place. So we've done work You know, certainly in our water system, there's a significant amount of money we're putting forward there. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the DPW garage is part of this one now, right?
Yeah, it's in there.
Right, it's on there, so it's the things that are on there. So the total was $8,188,670, a 7.6% increase. The principal, interestingly, the principal is about $5 million, and the interest is about 3.2. The interest rates are still not horrible. We still have a lot of favorable borrowing in place. Going forward, that's gonna get a little bit tougher, but that's a discussion for, you know, another day, or we could talk about it tonight. There's nothing to vote on. So we voted 2-0. Being of, you know, sound mind and good judgment, we thought we should pay this.
We didn't make any additional demands in that.
No, no demands.
Anything additional from administration?
No, just to add that when we have our ratings call, and we were reaffirmed as a AAA district, so congratulations to Gary and the whole finance team for that. And we do tell them that we anticipate our debt service budget will be approved at town meeting, and everybody will get paid.
We're trying to come through.
That would screw that up.
Nothing like the federal government.
That would be a problem. Questions? Ed?
So this article is just to approve the next financial year. And
Just 24.
are all of the interest rates fixed on what we're paying right now?
So anything that was already sold is, anything that's a proposed project, we upped it last year, and we use 4 for 20, 4.5. We use 4 for bands, 4.5 for 20, and 5 for 30.
And that's just your
Yeah, it's just what our
expectation of the
financial
prevailing
advisors say
rate?
to be conservative.
Yeah.
You know, for example, we just sold a band for $12 million the other day, and the net interest was 3.22. The coupon rate was 5, but after the premium, it was down to 3.22. So. And I think Brookline and Weston, who are both AAA, went out for permanent recently, and were around 4, just over 4. So.
So we're beating them. Very
Yeah,
good.
luckily, the municipal market doesn't see what the housing market for sure, and other interest rates, it's a, you know, a little bit more secure, I would say, so we don't see the spikes that they do.
Very good.
Yeah, so just to put this in perspective, we're spending something like 160 million-ish or so, so it's about 5% of our budget in very round numbers. So, yeah.
Is it appropriate to talk about the projections going forward?
Absolutely.
What are our interest rate assumptions for the projections here? I see 10 years of projections of.
So that's why I was talking, we use a 4 for a short term, and 4.5 and 5 for everything going forward, just to be
So,
conservative.
all the way forward, okay.
Yeah.
Good. And the numbers, I assume, for principal for the next 10 years are coming from the capital budget?
Yes.
And how do we project those costs? Because I'm looking at some of the big ticket items, and I apologize, you've probably heard this before from me, and you'll hear it again. I've seen some bigger numbers, and construction costs are going up, and I'm in favor of trying to be realistic even when it is potentially painful.
Yeah, and I think we, you know, at our debt summit last year, we talked about they're under budgeted and under escalated for sure. In that the closer we get, the more we try to massage those. And luckily, we're coming up on a time where we're gonna have the results of a police station feasibility study and a Fox Hill feasibility study to really nail down those numbers. And a future article that talks about a potential high school feasibility study to see what those numbers is most certainly gonna be larger than the 13 and 40 you see on there for the high school HVAC and project. But remember, that's only our portion. So assuming they're an MSBA project, you see 27 million for Fox Hill, that's assuming it's $54 million project.
That is an assumption. So I look forward to those discussions in the future.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, just to sort of dovetail with where Ed is at. It's really critical that we get these, evaluations and architectural designs and options in place. The police, I think we're a little more confident what's going to happen, but we've got a report back now.
No,
We
it's
don't.
just started.
Just started, okay, so we've got 4 of these in flight, really, well, 3 of them in flight, and without that data, it really is hard to know, even what your options are, let alone what the costs of the options are. And the other thing that's equally hard to know is the pacing, because you might say, I want to do, a building here, and then a building here, and a building there, but the market may not even let you do it in that pacing. So until you get an option that you really want to go out and get a bid on, which would include timing and pricing, you actually don't know what the flow is going to be like through the debt schedule. And what they desperately want to have happen is that we have no more than 0.5% peaks and valleys. It's okay to grow, but it's not okay to go up 4% one year and down 6% the next year. You really want to get it level, and we don't know how that's going to work out. So until we get more data, I feel like, we just have to wait a little bit longer. And I'd say over the next year, we're going to know a lot more, and then I think we've got to really go to work and do some analysis on what the options mean, what the flows could be, and start getting these things in flight. We also don't know what the interest rates are actually going to do. I mean, I don't know about the rest of you, but I feel like I have no clue what borrowing is actually going to be in 2 or 3 years. I just don't. You can guess all you want, but an awful lot can happen, so, it's a lot of unknowns here. But we do know we have a lot to build, right? The town has really got a backlog of infrastructure that it's just got to catch up to over the course of the next, let's say, decade, for sure, and we'll do it.
So Chairman, just to add a couple things to that is that we use every tool in our toolbox to help with that. When we talk about the pace of the borrowing, we don't have to borrow everything right away, so we see a big number in one year. Doesn't necessarily mean that's the number we're borrowing that year, because it depends how fast the project's gonna go. We keep things off of the debt schedule. For instance, there's 2 things that are on here that won't be, that if passed at town meeting, will be free cash articles, and that will help in next year when we do our projection. And the third thing is what we've done for quite some time here is smoothing out the increase so that we don't do what Frank was talking about, have spikes and valleys. We smooth it out, so we're gonna get from one place to another in a pretty steady increase, and just use that extra, if there is any in any year, to buy down, and then that just helps us in future years. So,
Question?
Motion to pay our debts.
Second.
Good move.
All right, this is for the debt principal of $4,963,473. Raise your hand if in favor. Opposed? Abstained? Okay, and I'll take that as a double motion, since you said principal and interest.
I said debts.
That's what I heard.
Okay. I really wasn't interested in paying the interest part.
I knew what you meant. Now, this is for debt interest of $3,225,197. Those in favor, yes. Opposed, abstained? Very good, that's 1100 also. All right, next on the agenda is the ARPA fund accounting. John?
So I shared with you a preview of a memo that we'll share with the select board when we go to talk to them about this in June. We had talked about ARPA before and some of things that are coming from that, so I just tried to share a summary of what it was. I think everybody knows we got $8.5 million allotment. We spent $1.5 million on revenue replacement for our local receipts revenue. We spent another $500,000 to design the PFAS project when that first came about, and we earmarked about $1 million for any ongoing and other COVID-related or other costs that came from it. So that was that's $3 million that we had earmarked, which left us 5.5 that the administration has talked about using to keep something off the debt schedule. Originally, we had earmarked that for PFAS, because that $15 million came out of nowhere. It wasn't on our debt plan. We didn't know about it, and we were hit with it. Recently, we've changed routes with that because we were able to secure a 0% loan for PFAS and an additional $1 million from the feds to help cover that $15 million PFAS project. So we're still planning on spending it on water or sewer projects, but we'll just keep something else off the debt schedule, so now the less interest that we'll have to pay there. That 5.5 million could wind up being more, or probably likely will be more than 5.5 million, because we won't spend the whole earmark of $1 million for the other or COVID-related cost. To date, we've only committed or spent 250,000 of it on the things that you've heard about at these meetings. And then I listed some of the other things. The mental health at both the police station and the youth and family last year and this year. Communication plan was one of the things. Some sort of modifications for safety and social distancing, and the remote meeting technology. So we've paid for the WebEx license, which is $11,000 a year. We've paid for that for a couple of years and probably will be able to one more year. And then some of these type of setups to be able to have remote and hybrid meetings. So that's kind of just a quick summary of what we've spent it on and what our plan is to come back. We'll probably have to do it next fall, because it would be the following fall where it expires, to, sort of get everybody's on the same page about using that leftover funds to keep stuff off the debt schedule.
When you say following fall, I'm trying to calculate what year that is.
So you have to have committed and spent it by December of '25.
December of '25, okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, good.
I'm sorry, December of '25.
Any questions on ARPA funds?
So,
Right.
just to, you were right, John, about the PFAS. So, as this is published, this is a draft, and this is sort of their best guess at where it's all gonna roll out. And out of the 1 million that's earmarked for COVID costs, anything that we don't use out of that will probably roll back into the amount that isn't used so far, which we'll put towards debt service or debt deferment. That could be as much as maybe $6 million, depends on how much we use for other things. So you did interpret it correctly on the PFAS. We did fund the design study.
But you were right, there's an extra $1 million coming in that I had
Yeah,
not heard.
depending on what we use, right? So,
Mr. Chairman, one more correction from what I said. I meant December of FY '25, which would be September of calendar '24.
December.
Now I've told you 5 different things, so this is the last one.
This time for sure.
and I can
Some
throw in-
December, some year.
So December of 2024 is when we have to have
Correct.
committed all the spending.
Yes.
I could
We don't
have
have
this
to
much trouble.
actually spend it, we just have to identify where it's going. Is that a good way to think about that, or?
We will have to have committed it, so we will have to have obligated it, done the project. We don't necessarily have to have the check out the door,
Okay,
but we should.
but it has to be
should not-
encumbered.
Wait.
Right.
Got it.
So will the debt be established enough that we can, which debt could we apply it to at that?
So we can do it to anything that we're ongoing or anything we have a ban for.
Yeah, so we don't really care what it is, actually.
Yeah.
Debt is
It'll be
debt.
half water, half sewer, something like that.
Right, okay.
Shouldn't have a problem finding a place to
Yeah.
put
Yeah,
it.
we have plenty of it.
We have plenty of it.
Park it somewhere.
All right. Were there any additional questions on ARPA? Okay. We'll move on then. Let's see, we did the proposed schools. Do we have the school assessments to talk
We
about?
do.
Excellent.
Can we start with,
Number 9, Essex School Assessment.
can we start with Minuteman and then do the other
Okay,
Essex?
let's do Minuteman.
So the current enrollment this year for Minuteman is one person. They're in grade 12, so we're expecting them to graduate. No one was accepted from non-member schools this year, so our rate of participation at Minuteman is 0, and therefore the budget is 0, and that concludes that particular discussion. I don't think we need to take a vote on voting no money.
Excellent, we don't need to vote on 0. I like it.
So in addition, from Essex perspective, in addition, Burlington has 2 schools that the kids can choose for high school. Either they go to a traditional high school or a vocational one. When the vocational program that they're interested in is not offered at Shawshene, they are able to explore other alternatives. And for students who are primarily interested in agriculture, Essex Tech is one of those places. There are other programs there that if Shawshene doesn't offer, they can elect to go there as well. And essentially, we're assessed a standard tuition that is, or a fee that's composed of 3 components: a tuition, a small capital fee, and then also the transportation costs to get the students to and from Essex Tech. This year's current enrollment is 2 students. There are 2 students who are applied and on the wait list. They have not been accepted, but are on the wait list. The administration is proposing a budget of $106,865, which is level funded from last year. I know the scorecard is showing a higher number as of today of $112,208. So I think we talked about this earlier. You wanted to use the level funded number.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what, what the feeling is about the budget book and trying to match that versus saving a few $1,000s. If all 4 students go, we'd be on the hook for about $88,000 in tuition and fees, and then if anybody had an IEP, there would be additional assessment for that. So that's why I thought the level funded number would be fine. It would cover if they were accepted and if they had any services that were an additional charge. But that's
The IEP assessment, the special education, is currently not known. It could be as small as $1,500 per student, but it could be a lot more. It just depends on what that program is. And we wouldn't know that until they get actually off the wait list and accepted. Subcommittee voted 5-0 in favor.
Excellent, thank you. David?
When do they have to make the decisions?
It comes after town meeting. So
After town meeting.
it comes after town meeting, so we have to kind of budget for it. If we don't actually spend this money, it goes back into free cash.
Yeah.
But we do have to allocate it before town meeting.
And wait lists can happen up until a couple days before school starts. So these students could technically stay on the wait list, somebody could drop out, and they could say, August 28th, hey, we have a spot. So,
Other questions?
Motion to approve?
Second. Which number, again? The 106?
We're going to vote the 106,865.
Right, and just to be clear, scorecard had an increase, but the plan is to go with the level fund 106,865.
scorecard had an increase. We just, for our placeholder, we just did a 5%. It's tough for these ones because their acceptance letters don't even go out till April, and then they have a couple weeks to say whether they want in or not. Well, they have several months to say whether they really want in or not. So this one is always kind of tight. But since the budget book is already going to be different with the school budget, if it weren't, I would say let's try to keep the budget book intact, and we'll just return the money that we don't use. But since we already have to change it,
Okay,
I guess either one is fine for us.
you got to pick one. We've heard the 106 is the one you wanted to go with, then. Okay.
0%.
Okay, other comments or questions?
That would at least allow the local education committee to bring at least one budget in under guidelines.
There we go.
well, 2.
And
Well, Minuteman's pretty good.
Well, yeah, we did great with Minuteman, yeah,
In the schools, there's 13K less.
right.
Well, less than 2 weeks ago, but
But they're still over guideline.
let's not get into that one.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John.
This budget stuff and accounting stuff used to be so exact, now I'm hearing whatever year, whatever
Yeah.
number.
3
You know.
years from now.
The good news is we do sort it out before we vote.
Yeah. We need free cash.
Okay, anything additional? No. Thank you for that comment. Have a motion?
I think it was moved and
You
seconded.
already have one? Wow,
Yeah.
things are happening, I don't even notice it. All right, so this is for the Essex School Assessment for $106,865. Raise your hand if in favor. Opposed, abstained, good, we're all still here, right?
Yep.
Make sure no one snuck out on me. Whoops, that's 1100. Let's get that in here. Very good. All right. It's that one. Just make sure we're not missing anything. All right, finally, on to approval of the minutes. So I sent around the April 19th minutes from last week. Didn't see any comments. Any comments now? Okay, well, then let's have a motion.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Thank you. All right, those in favor of approving the April 19th minutes, raise your hands. All right, keep them up, I gotta get this on the right people here. All right, so we got Chris, Brad, Megan, John, Rob, Mike, Ed, and Frank. This is the hardest one every time. All right, opposed and abstained. All right, so that's Steve, Doug, and
David.
David.
Not because they weren't written well.
I can
but
Frank
just-
it.
Thank you. Brad, how did you vote on that one?
I voted
You were a yes, okay.
yes.
I got one name off here. All right, that is 803. Thank you, motion passes. All right, so just coming up for next week here, which is our final meeting before town meeting, okay? All the operating budgets are now complete. We have now completed all of the accommodated budgets.
Oh, I had one more note with respect to warrant Article 31,
Yeah.
which was the town,
The fields.
right,
Yes.
they've withdrawn.
It is withdrawn, okay.
If they haven't withdrawn, they're planning to withdraw, so we don't need to do anything about it.
Thank you, that's good to know. Just make a note of that so I don't accidentally put it on here. Let's see, we've done these two things are outstanding. Okay, so for next week, I sent out a tentative agenda already. We've already modified it a little bit in that the Article 19 was tabled till next week, so we'll have that A&P plan hopefully. The two tabled DPW articles will come back
For what?
with more backup hopefully.
Oh, yeah.
And we then have a number of Town Hall 2
Thank you.
articles that we'll be doing. I know some has the historical shed been withdrawn yet, or you're still?
No, I sent you an email.
You did, that one is withdrawn. So,
And,
and the sculpture part.
sculpture, yeah.
So Articles 25 and 28 will be taken off of the list. And then we have a collection of Recreation Department articles. And I will take off all the school stuff that I put on just in case, now that we've done that tonight. And then finally, we'll have,
You don't want to give them a chance to find another 13,000?
oh, I'm sure they'll find it if they look. There'll be a representative from General Bylaw Review Committee, as I mentioned a week or two ago, to just talk about, they're developing some articles to reintroduce on remote meetings and hybrid meetings that they wanted to get our input on. So think about what your input is for that. And that, final look at the agenda here. That is everything. Did you have something, Doug, or no? Okay. We are done.